This Arctic blast is not going anywhere. The brutal cold that has taken hold of the eastern United States will dominate the entire month of February, and the atmospheric science behind this forecast represents one of the most reliable long-range weather predictions meteorologists have made in years. What we are experiencing right now is not a typical winter cold snap that moves through in a matter of days. This is a fundamental reorganization of the atmospheric circulation pattern that has locked Arctic air masses in place across the eastern half of the United States. The polar vortex disruption that began in late January has created a persistent negative Arctic oscillation pattern that shows remarkable stability in long-range forecast models. Current temperature readings across the affected region demonstrate the intensity of this Arctic air mass. Wisconsin has recorded temperatures as low as minus 42 degrees Fahrenheit, representing the coldest readings in that state since 2019. Minnesota has experienced wind chills approaching minus 60 degrees at multiple observation stations. These are not isolated readings or measurement errors. These temperatures reflect the establishment of a coherent Arctic air mass that extends from the Canadian border southward into the Gulf Coast states. This pattern shows no signs of weakening as we move deeper into February. The Climate Prediction Center has issued their monthly temperature outlook with unusually high confidence, showing below-average temperatures across the entire eastern United States for the remainder of February. This forecast represents the consensus of multiple weather prediction models. It incorporates the kind of atmospheric pattern analysis that meteorologists use when they have strong confidence in long-range predictions. The stratospheric warming event that triggered this polar vortex breakdown occurred in the upper atmosphere, roughly 20 to 30 miles above the Earth's surface. When sudden stratospheric warming events occur, they create cascading effects that eventually reach surface weather patterns, but this process unfolds over the course of weeks rather than days. The critical aspect of this particular event is that it has established a self-reinforcing feedback mechanism that maintains the negative Arctic oscillation pattern. Under normal winter conditions, the polar vortex acts as a containment system that keeps the coldest air bottled up over the Arctic regions. This containment depends on a strong temperature gradient between the Arctic and lower latitudes, along with a coherent circulation pattern in the upper atmosphere. When sudden stratospheric warming disrupts this system, the polar vortex weakens or splits entirely, allowing Arctic air masses to spill southward into regions that normally experience much milder winter conditions. The geographical layout of North America makes the eastern United States particularly vulnerable to these Arctic outbreaks. Unlike Europe, which has east-west mountain barriers that can disrupt the flow of Arctic air, the North American continent provides a relatively unobstructed pathway for cold air masses to travel from northern Canada all the way to the Gulf of Mexico. This is where the current situation becomes particularly concerning for millions of people across the affected region. The energy implications of sustained extreme cold create compounding problems that extend far beyond individual heating bills. Electric utility companies across the eastern United States are already implementing demand management protocols during peak heating hours, which typically occur between 5 and 9 in the morning when heating systems work hardest after overnight temperature drops. Duke Energy has requested voluntary conservation measures from customers across the Carolinas during these critical time periods. Similar conservation requests have been issued by utility companies from Texas through New England, indicating the widespread nature of grid stress that occurs when heating demand exceeds normal winter planning parameters for extended periods. These conservation requests reflect a fundamental challenge in electric grid management during prolonged extreme cold events. Power generation facilities face their own operational challenges when temperatures remain consistently below design specifications, while distribution systems become less efficient as equipment operates outside normal temperature ranges. Natural gas pipeline systems also experience increased demand that can strain capacity when residential, commercial, and industrial customers all require maximum heating simultaneously for weeks, rather than just during brief cold snaps. The infrastructure that delivers energy to homes and businesses was designed with safety margins for typical winter conditions, including short-term extreme events. However, the sustained nature of this Arctic pattern tests those margins in ways that routine winter weather does not. Transportation systems throughout the northern tier of states continue to experience cascading disruptions that affect national commerce and supply chains. Airlines have proactively canceled thousands of flights, not just because of immediate weather conditions, but because of the ongoing operational challenges that extreme cold creates for aircraft systems, ground equipment, and passenger safety protocols. When temperatures consistently remain below operational thresholds, airlines must implement modified procedures that reduce efficiency and increase delays, even when visibility and precipitation are not factors. Freight transportation faces similar challenges that create ripple effects throughout supply chains serving the entire country. Trucking companies report equipment failures, increased fuel consumption, and driver safety concerns that limit operations during the most extreme cold periods. Railroad systems experience track and signal problems that can delay freight shipments for days, affecting everything from automotive parts to agricultural products destined for markets far from the actual cold zones. But this represents only the immediate impacts of the current pattern. The agricultural implications of sustained extreme cold reach well beyond the current growing season and extend into food production concerns that could affect markets for months after temperatures eventually return to normal. Livestock operations from the Dakotas through Georgia have implemented emergency protocols to protect animals from temperatures that can cause serious harm or death within hours of exposure. These protocols require around-the-clock monitoring, additional shelter construction, and backup heating systems that consume enormous amounts of energy, while straining both labor resources and operating budgets. Feed costs increase dramatically when animals require additional calories to maintain body temperature during sustained cold periods. Water systems freeze despite heating elements and insulation, requiring constant attention and emergency interventions that add to operational expenses. Many livestock operations face the difficult decision of whether to maintain normal herd sizes or reduce numbers to ensure adequate shelter and heating capacity for remaining animals. Fruit and vegetable crops in southern states face potential damage that could affect food supplies and pricing throughout 2026. Florida citrus growers have been monitoring temperatures carefully since the Arctic air began moving south, and they now face consecutive nights of damaging cold temperatures that could impact citrus production for the entire year. Some agricultural economists estimate that crop losses could reach hundreds of millions of dollars if the cold pattern persists through mid-February, as current forecast models indicate. For millions of people across the affected region, this changes daily routines in fundamental ways. The human health implications of prolonged extreme cold become exponentially more serious when people must endure these conditions for weeks rather than days. Hypothermia and frostbite risks increase dramatically when there are fewer opportunities for recovery between cold episodes. Emergency departments throughout the region are seeing increased cases of cold-related injuries and illnesses, while also preparing for the cumulative health effects that develop when people must cope with extreme conditions for extended periods. Vulnerable populations face the greatest risks during sustained extreme cold events. Elderly residents, people without reliable heating, and those experiencing homelessness encounter cumulative health risks that emergency services struggle to address with normal winter protocols. Warming centers that might typically operate for 2 or 3 days during routine cold snaps now require supplies, staffing, and funding to remain operational for potentially several weeks. Mental health impacts of prolonged extreme weather create additional challenges for communities already dealing with the physical and economic stresses of the cold pattern. Seasonal affective disorders become more pronounced when winter conditions are both more severe and longer lasting than people normally experience. Social isolation increases when travel becomes consistently difficult rather than occasionally inconvenient, affecting everything from routine medical appointments to family gatherings and community activities. Emergency management officials throughout the affected region have shifted from short-term cold weather response to sustained winter operations that require different resources and planning approaches. Power outage restoration becomes significantly more complicated when repair crews must work in sustained extreme cold conditions that exceed normal safety protocols. Equipment failures increase when temperatures remain below normal operating ranges for extended periods, while routine maintenance becomes dangerous when wind chills consistently reach levels that can cause frostbite within minutes of skin exposure. This is where the situation moves beyond inconvenience into territory that challenges the resilience of basic infrastructure systems. The atmospheric pattern supporting this extended cold spell shows remarkable persistence across multiple weather prediction models used by meteorologists to assess long-range forecast reliability. The European Center for Medium-Range Weather Forecasts, generally considered the most reliable long-range forecast model available to meteorologists, shows the negative Arctic oscillation pattern maintaining itself through at least the third week of February. The American Global Forecast System shows similar persistence, as do most of the ensemble forecast systems that provide insight into forecast uncertainty and alternative scenarios. This level of agreement among independent forecast models on extended patterns is relatively rare in meteorology and indicates that the atmospheric configuration driving this cold spell has the kind of stability that can maintain itself for weeks, rather than transitioning to different patterns within a few days. The jet stream configuration that typically brings changes in weather systems has become locked in a pattern that continues to direct Arctic air masses southward, while blocking the westerly flow that would normally bring milder air from the Pacific Ocean into the eastern United States. Historical analysis of similar atmospheric setups provides additional confidence in the extended duration of this cold pattern. When polar vortex disruptions occur in late January, the resulting cold patterns typically persist for 4 to 8 weeks, with some documented cases extending even longer when the stratospheric warming event is particularly intense and widespread. The current stratospheric warming event ranks among the most significant on record, which suggests that the surface impacts could persist well into March. What follows tends to be more entrenched rather than showing signs of gradual improvement. The snowpack that has accumulated across much of the northern United States will help maintain cold surface temperatures even during periods when solar heating might normally begin to moderate Arctic air masses. Fresh snow reflects solar radiation back to space rather than allowing it to warm the ground surface, creating a feedback mechanism that helps sustain cold temperatures for longer periods than would occur over bare ground. Ground temperatures throughout the affected region have dropped well below freezing and will remain there for the duration of this cold pattern. This creates ongoing challenges for underground utilities, foundation systems, and any infrastructure that depends on normal soil temperatures for proper operation. Water main breaks become more frequent when ground frost penetrates deeper than normal design specifications anticipate, while sewer systems can experience flow problems when the ground remains frozen for extended periods. Construction projects throughout the affected region face delays that extend well beyond the immediate weather impacts. Concrete cannot cure properly in extreme cold conditions, requiring heated enclosures or chemical additives that increase costs and complexity. Heavy equipment fails more frequently when temperatures remain consistently below manufacturer specifications. Worker safety protocols require modified schedules and additional protection measures that reduce productivity and extend project timelines. These delays create cascading effects in project schedules that can extend months beyond the actual cold weather period. Supply chains for construction materials experience disruptions when manufacturing facilities reduce operations due to energy costs and transportation challenges. Even projects in warmer regions can be affected when materials or specialized workers are sourced from cold-affected areas. The economic costs of this sustained cold pattern accumulate daily across multiple sectors of the regional and national economy. Heating bills for residential and commercial customers will reflect not just colder temperatures, but sustained high energy usage over an extended period that exceeds typical winter planning assumptions. Insurance claims for frozen pipes, equipment failures, and weather-related accidents continue mounting as long as the extreme conditions persist, affecting premium calculations for years to come. Retail businesses throughout the affected region experience reduced foot traffic as people limit non-essential travel during sustained cold periods. Restaurants, shopping centers, and entertainment venues report significant revenue declines when temperatures make outdoor activities uncomfortable or dangerous for extended periods. Even essential businesses face increased operating costs for heating, employee transportation assistance, and backup systems to maintain operations during power outages or equipment failures. Regional economic impacts extend into sectors that might not immediately appear weather sensitive. Banking and financial services require additional resources to maintain data centers and communication systems during extreme cold periods. Healthcare systems face increased demand for emergency services while dealing with their own operational challenges related to heating, equipment reliability, and staff transportation. Manufacturing facilities throughout the affected region must balance production schedules against energy costs and worker safety concerns that intensify during sustained extreme cold. Some industrial processes become inefficient or impossible when facility temperatures cannot be maintained within operational specifications despite maximum heating system output. The seasonal progression towards spring, which normally begins to moderate winter weather patterns by mid-February, will be delayed by several weeks if this atmospheric pattern continues, as forecast models indicate. Even when temperatures eventually begin to moderate, the recovery toward normal seasonal temperatures will happen more gradually because of the deep cold that has penetrated both the atmosphere and ground surface throughout the region. Educational institutions, from elementary schools through universities, have been forced to modify their winter semester schedules repeatedly as extreme cold days accumulate beyond the typical allowances built into academic calendars for weather-related closures. Some school districts are implementing extended spring semesters or summer sessions to compensate for instructional time lost to weather conditions that show no signs of moderating on any predictable timeline. The energy sector faces sustained demand that exceeds typical winter peak loads, not just during the coldest days, but consistently throughout this extended cold period. Natural gas storage levels, which normally decline gradually throughout a typical winter heating season, are dropping at accelerated rates that raise concerns about supply adequacy if the cold pattern continues into March, as some long-range forecast indicators suggest remains possible. This pattern represents exactly the kind of sustained winter weather that tests the resilience of every system communities depend on for normal daily life. The meteorological mechanisms that created this situation remain firmly established in the upper atmosphere, and the long-range forecast models show no clear signals for significant pattern change through the remainder of February. The polar vortex disruption that triggered this extended cold spell appears to have created an atmospheric configuration that will maintain itself well into March, before any substantial moderation becomes likely. This represents a winter weather pattern that will define February 2026 for millions of Americans across the eastern states.